In here before it's officially time to start the show here today. We got our two spinning wheels there, 1 and 2. There we go. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday night, 6:20 at 6:02, 6:03 Mountain Time. It means it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, on these Tuesday evening shows, Carl Dumler. Carl, how you doing out there? How are things out there in the greater plains?
Things are good, man. We had 2-inch rain the other night. It was kind of crazy. Lightning struck the ground. The whole house was shaking. People had pictures falling off their walls, and you know how it is out in the Midwest. You never know what's going to happen. My wife was driving through snow last week. Lightning, hail this week. You know, it just it's getting biblical here. But no, it's been a lot of fun. We had a big car show this last week. Lots of cool cars coming in. Lots of good food, and got some sun. If you can't tell, got a little reddish tint to myself tonight. So if you want to, I guess Oompa Loompas are orange, so can't call me that. But no, it's good. Got some golf in. Like I said, it's fun to be in the summer. I can't wait for football, but at the same time, there's still a lot of things to do out in the summer. I had a guy ask me the other day when mini camp got over, and he's like, "What do we do now?" And I was like, "Go outside."
Yep. Go enjoy yourself. Go find a trail. Go do something outside, family, boating. I mean, although I've never lived in the South, and I think the summer sounds pretty hellscapish sometimes in the summer or down in the South. So can't subscribe to that. But out here, Pacific Northwest, enjoying myself. Parents land here on Wednesday evening. So excited to see them. Haven't seen them in a year. So it'll be good. And let's say hello to some people in here talking about family. We got Dominique Martin in the house. Hey, Broncos family. Just checking in. I'll catch the podcast when I get to work later. That's what we like, Dominique. That way you can do it double time, right? I always listen to podcasts while I'm working too. So as long as I'm not doing anything that requires my attention too much. But he says MHH for life as always. Thank you so much, Dominique. Mike S is in the house saying, "What's up, Nick, Carl, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos Country?" Good to see you, Mike S. Dylan Von Ark's in the house saying, "Sup, Broncos Country." Make sure you guys hit that like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much, Dylan. We got our guy Kevin Gray in here saying, "Evening, Broncos Country, Nick, Carl, and Scott." Big mile high salute to Broncos Country. I heard a rumor I don't think would happen. Washington's middle defensive line. What do you think? So he must be talking about Daron Payne, right? I know he was tagged. Maybe there was a rumor that he might be shipped off or something. That's got to be it. Or are they talking Jonathan Allen here? You got a few different guys.
Yeah. I mean, any of them would be an upgrade for the Broncos.
Oh, big time.
So I would not hate that, depending on what the Broncos have to give up. But, I mean, the other part of it is then you got to give them a big contract too. Yeah. And Broncos weren't willing to give their own guy a big contract that just left this offseason. So I'm a little leery about that. They just signed Zach Allen to a decent contract. I don't know cap-wise. I mean, I know you can make it work. You always can. Mm-hmm. But I have a hard time seeing that one happen.
Yeah, Kevin, you have to let us know which one. Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. Chase Young has been in the rumors a lot recently as well. I mean, God, if Chase Young's available, sign me up. I'd be interested in making that call too. So Washington, they have really good front seven, defensive talent. And if some of those guys are available, maybe pick up the phone and see at least what it would cost. The nose guard must be talking about Daron Payne in that regard. We got our guy Troy coming in here. Troy double dipping today. Troy gave a super chat this morning. Now he's in here Tuesday evenings. Thanks so much, Troy. He says, "Hey guys, I'll have to listen later, but have a great show. Do you do Diggs for Sutton and a third? Without a doubt in the world, that trade is yes. Yes, you do that trade without a doubt."
Yeah, I can't see the Bills being on board with this idea. I love Sutton. I've been a huge Sutton fan for the Broncos for the last few years, even with his injury. But Stefon Diggs, you're talking about a top 5 receiver in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And, somebody I was listening to earlier this week, they were talking about him and said, "Oh, yeah, he's kind of on his downhill side of his career." He had over 1,400 yards last year, 11 touchdowns, over 100 receptions. If that's the downhill part of his career, sign me up for that. Yeah. And, I do worry a little bit of some of the rumors coming out that he's not happy with the offensive system, wants to be a bigger part of designing it throughout the week, those kind of things. I can't see Sean Payton being very happy about that idea and pretty much doing the hey, we'll get you the ball when we want to get you the ball. Now, if he signs if they trade for Stefon Diggs, I'm sure Sean Payton's like, okay, how do we get this guy involved? He would be right there in the Michael Thomas role for the Denver Broncos. So he'd get plenty of balls thrown his direction, but I just can't see the Bills letting him go for anything less than some kind of first round talent back.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it would take second and third, but you guys have to remember, Broncos were shopping Sutton pretty good around the combine, a little bit after that as well, leading up to the draft. And it started off with like, oh, we'd take a second for him. Maybe we'll take a third for him. It's day 3 pick. I mean, obviously Sutton is low value right now. I think you're buying low or selling low in that regard. But Diggs is probably worth the late first. I mean, look what Devontae Adams got, and Diggs is not as good as Adams, but I don't think he's quite as old either. So you're probably talking about a top 40 pick for him. Sutton's value is probably a early 4th right now. So a early 4th and a 3rd for Diggs. I think that the Bills would hang up the phone very quickly on you in that offer.
Right.
And I want to say that's more about my perception of Diggs than it is Sutton. I think Sutton will end up working his way out and being pretty good this season, contributing to the team. But Diggs is a very damn good receiver.
Well, and the other part of this, I was just looking it up. Cortland Sutton, I think, has a base salary of $14 million this year. So that would mean the Bills would be taking that kind of money on. Where Stefon Diggs, his is less than $2 million that the Broncos would have to take on for a cap hit. Now, next year, it'd be over $18 million. So they'd have to figure out, I mean, they'd be able to rework his deal because he wouldn't have any more guaranteed money at that point. But still, you're talking about a $13 million swing there in cap hit on top of you're getting a lesser player and only a 3rd round pick. So that's why, again, I'm saying that the Bills hang up on the phone on that.
Yeah.
I love Sutton, and I think he is undervalued right now. I think he can have a breakout season, especially with Sean Payton here to really highlight his abilities. I don't think last year they did a great job of highlighting what he's good at, but until he proves it on the field, until he really shows he's back to that 2019 kind of ability, every team's going to be looking at him and saying, that's a good number 3, maybe a low end number 2 wide receiver in the NFL.
Yep. I think mid-ranking number 2, low end number 2 right now is where I have him. But, he's not really performed the last couple seasons and hasn't been the same coming off that injury. So we're all kind of waiting and seeing. Thank you so much, Troy, for the super chat. We really do appreciate that, supporting building the Broncos. We got Chase coming in saying BTB with the fist bump. Thank you for also supporting the Broncos there, Chase. Jesse Hilborn saying good evening, everyone. US Dave's in the house. Good to see you. Got our guy William Hayes saying Broncos number 1. There you go, Williams. Good, William. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. We got David Meckelrath coming in saying good evening, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Good to see you. Ernie Mays in the house saying hello, Carl and Nick. Hello to you, Ernie. Hope you're doing well. Zach Powers in the house saying afternoon, fellas. Good evening to you. Got our guy Michael Ronquillo in the house with the stars always supporting the show saying good evening, Nick and Carl on building the Broncos. Go Broncos in Buckham. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well, Michael. Appreciate you always supporting the show. We also got William Hayes saying Darnold going to Seattle. Forgot the guy who got cut. I must have missed something. I thought Darnold was with the 49ers.
Yeah.
Am I? Okay.
I have a hard time seeing that he got traded already.
Yeah. Forgot the guy who got cut. Well, Darnold's with San Francisco last I knew, but you guys can check on that. I hope you're doing well. We have Bradley Conger coming in and say, have you guys gone back and done a deep dive into the first few years of coaches' tenure at the Saints? Are you asking about the coaches the Broncos have that are former Saints coaches or ones who are first-time Saints coaches? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking here, Bradley, but you could dig through that and get back to us on that one. Any idea, Carl?
I'm not 100% sure what the question is there. Yeah, Bradley, if you could just kind of sum it up a little bit more. Obviously, the Saints did great early on in Sean Payton's tenure with the Saints. And so a lot of guys ended up getting jobs elsewhere. I mean, he's been one of the better coaches of helping really spring forward a lot of careers out there for coaches. And I think you see here with the Denver Broncos, he's got a very nice mix of older coaches that have been in the league for a long time and first-time coaches. And I think he really does like taking on some first timers that he kind of believes have something that he can work with. Now, they're not going to be perfect. And so it does make me a little nervous on some of the coaches the Broncos brought in, that there's going to be some growing pains within that. But I think Sean Payton has this idea of, I can cover a lot of that up just because I'm that good of a coach. Now, that could be pride getting in the way, or it could just be that he really is that good.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting to follow, without a doubt. We got Phil McLaughlin coming in, always a big star giver as well. Good to see you, Phil. Hope you're doing well. Says, good evening, Carl, Nick, and Deacon Scott. Is Broncos' recent signing Frank Clark going to be an outside linebacker or a defensive end? Hashtag Buckham and hashtag MHH for life. He's going to be an outside linebacker, I guess, technically, but think of it just as edge. The defensive end, he's going to be playing that outside pass rusher spot. Bradley Chubb was, 6'4", 275, 270. Defensive end body type, more prototype defensive end body type, but played outside linebacker as well. That's what you're going to see from Frank Clark. Are they going to be dropping him into coverage as much as they will Randy Gregory, Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning? Probably not. He's probably going to be more of pass rush specialist focused, at least. But definitely think outside linebackers, the correct terminology if you are talking Clark, but I would utilize the terminology edge instead.
Yeah. And okay. It looks like it wasn't Darnold, the quarterback, Aaron Donald, the defensive lineman.
Oh, okay.
The LA Rams defender. So I can't see the Rams deciding to trade off their best player and maybe the best player in the NFL right now
to divisional rival in Seattle.
Right. Yeah. I can't see them doing that. Especially they got McVay back. I can't see him saying, I came back to then take a step back as a team.
Unless he's all in for Caleb Williams.
Is he willing to take an entire year of really sucking, though?
I mean, I would to keep Caleb Williams in LA, but that's just me. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about Darnold potentially being traded. So it would be interesting to follow it. We'll see. But yeah, thank you so much. Do you agree with my assessment? Frank Clark, outside linebacker by definition, but I mean, he's mostly played defensive end. Well, he's mostly played in 4-3s, right? So he'll be an edge. It just depends on, he's going to be that outside pass rusher, depending on what scheme you are. Could be outside linebacker, defensive end, but just think of him as an edge.
Yeah, he'll have his hand in the dirt on some plays. Other plays, he'll be up, like you said, in that outside linebacker spot coming off the edge. He did decent for the Chiefs, actually, even dropping back into coverage a little bit last year and the limited opportunities that he was given for that. So I think they'll use him a little bit that way, not a whole lot. You don't want him going backwards a whole lot. I mean, most of these edge guys, you don't want them going backwards. So, like I said last week, decent signing for the Broncos. Not my favorite player by any means, but listening to, I think somebody sent me something about Ngakoue. He's wanting like $9 million a year. So I'm starting to understand a little bit more of why maybe the Broncos went with Frank Clark. I would guess that the Broncos called a bunch of those guys and said, hey, this is the price. This is what we're willing to pay. And whoever calls us back first, you get the deal. And I'm sure Frank Clark was that guy that called. It's kind of like when the Broncos signed Aqib Talib. I remember they took that same offer to DRC, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, if you remember. He was with the Broncos before. His contract ended, and they said, hey, here's a deal we're willing to offer you. He said, I'm not taking that. And they said, okay, called Aqib Talib right after that. He said, oh, yeah, I'll take it. And then DRC called back like the next day and was like, you know what? I've changed my mind. And they're going, sorry, we already signed our guy. You snooze, you lose. You don't got time to wait in this when we're hitting free agency. And I mean, obviously worked out great for the Broncos. I love DRC. His ability to get down the field with his size, speed. He wasn't a great tackler.
I'm going to say the Super Bowl haunts me with him, but yeah.
But still did a lot of good for the Broncos in his little time that he was with the Broncos. But again, Aqib Talib on a whole nother level, possibly Hall of Fame kind of guy. Obviously changed the dynamic of the locker room for the better for those couple years.
Yeah. One of the defining players of an era and a franchise, honestly, with that run that they had there. So love Aqib Talib. Also love him as an announcer. He is so good as an announcer. So hopefully he can, continue on that path. But I think he's got a good future there. Darren Kendell, I recognize that name. Hey, Dad, happy belated Father's Day. The super sticker coming in. Thank you so much. We appreciate that, getting the ball rolling. And I will see you in about 26 hours. Larry No Filter coming in saying, I don't think there are enough footballs to go around. 4 good receivers, a couple of tight ends, and we're supposed to be a run first team. There's going to probably be some pecking order that's going to have to be figured out just yet. I will contest a little bit saying 4 good receivers. I don't know if we do have 4 good receivers, but in theory, it seems like a lot of question marks to me. But yeah, that does not seem like there's going to be a highly prolific passing game. And with that comes not as many opportunities. Somebody maybe gets their feelings hurt. Maybe somebody's traded off. Maybe it's spread evenly. Maybe the targets really saturate to 1 or 2 guys, and the rest of them kind of just have to be figuring out a new spot going forward. It's how the target share is distributed, who becomes the main go-to guys, what roles these pass catchers are in this season. Probably one of the most interesting storylines that we're going to continue to follow through training camp and probably the first 4 to 6 weeks of the regular season.
So I have a question for you. Somebody asked me this earlier of after minicamp is finally over now, any thoughts of what I've heard about the team and stuff. And I think something that's kind of stuck out to me with Sean Payton is some of the players that he has highlighted in his interview processes. You know, he's Greg Dulcich talking about him being the joker player on the offense. Albert Okwuegbunam was another one that he really kind of took a long time answer, talking about what he could be bringing to the team. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of those guys that were a lot of fringe players last year that they have athleticism to be good, but they have not become good in the NFL.
Yeah.
Do you read anything into that of him maybe just trying to motivate those guys? You know, he's kind of that psychological coach out there that just really wants to get to the minds of guys and see what he can do to push them to that next level.
I think Sean Payton's done this long enough that he's a little bit of a BSer on the stand, and you can follow him and take his word for it or not. I'm very much a seeing is believing kind of guy. So talking about Dulcich, talking about Albert Okwuegbunam, I don't know if you recall about a year ago, we spent half of a press conference talking about PJ Locke, who didn't do much at that point, you know, like good for him. Or a year ago, one of the big standouts of a mandatory minicamp that had a lot of comments was Michael Ojemudia, who didn't even stick on the roster. So I'm not taking too much on the comments right now. Yes, it's pertinent information, but how much value is in that information and what they're saying? I'm not placing very much on it until I actually see it with my own eyeballs against real competition.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I just thinking of those kind of guys. Again, great athleticism could be something in the NFL. You know, you're starting to see, I think football is one of the few sports where you don't have to play the game since you were like 5 years old to be great at it.
Yeah.
You can just be a great athlete and find a way to make it in the NFL. We've seen that with plenty of players. Sean Payton's worked with a couple tight ends that have just been great athletes that came into the NFL as basketball players, and he turned them into highlight reel tight ends. And so I think, you know, when I hear those kind of things, it just more for me, especially when he was talking about Albert Okwuegbunam, pretty much he was saying that of this guy's a great athlete. He can run down the field. He's fast. He's big. Now we just got to see if we can maximize that ability to actually play on the football field.
Yeah.
And so again, when I hear those kind of things, I think it's just that extra oomph of, hey, we want to see something from you. Like we want you to be something, but you got to go out there and earn this, obviously.
And the other thing with Albert Okwuegbunam, you know, best case, he's probably tight end 2. Like that's the best case. You know, tight end 2 has to damn well do.
Block.
Well, yes, but play special teams.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So that's a question mark as well. And that rule, I mean, it's non-negotiable for me. And I think it's probably a non-negotiable for Sean Payton. I mean, damn, if he has Patrick Surtain working out there and fielding punts, no doubt tight end 2 better damn well play some special teams out there. So will be interesting to follow that again. Want to see it with my own eyes. Again, 4 good receivers too. I mean, who are the 4? Mims hasn't played in the NFL yet. So wait and see on that one. Tim Patrick's coming off an injury. Cortland Sutton, we spent the first beginning of the show saying he was a, what'd you say, low end 2, high end 3. Is that good? I mean, he has been good, not recently though. And Jerry Jeudy towards the end of the season last year was good. So I think the pecking order, how this all shakes is going to be unbelievably fascinating to follow. And one of the things I'm most intrigued by watching to start the season, just for like the chemistry with Russell Wilson, what roles these guys are deployed in, and just what the distribution looks like.
Yeah. And then you got KJ Hamler as well.
Yep.
that, again, he's had his moments of showing some brightness in the NFL, but hasn't ever fully lived up to it because of injuries.
Yep.
And so you could say that about pretty much every one of those good receivers. They've all had their injuries now. They've all had moments of looking like they were on their way ascending into decent wide receiver area. I mean, Courtland Sutton, before his injury, was a low-end number one in the NFL. I would say he was right there on that edge of getting into the top 20 if he took just a little bit more step before that injury. Like I said, Jerry Jeudy, he's had times looking like a true number one wide receiver.
Yep.
And then he'll completely disappear the next week. So he's just that consistency is such a big part of what makes the great players great in the NFL.
Yeah. So going to be fascinating to follow. I heard Brendan Johnson was also an interesting player in Broncos mandatory mini camp. So will be fun to follow and see what happens. We got our guy Colby C. Collier coming in here with the support. Thank you so much, Colby. Hope you're doing well. We got Zach Power saying, how many linebackers did the Broncos keep? 4, maybe. We see him loaded at linebacker almost as much as wide receiver. Stranada's gone, I'm assuming, right? Circling back, it's going to come down to special teams. Stranada has actually been a pretty good special teams player for the Broncos here the last few seasons, somebody that they've highlighted as being a solid special teams player. So it's going to be interesting to see if they only keep 4 or 5. I mean, it could come down to 4 with Jonas Griffith getting the boot off the roster. You know, it's certainly possible. He profiles better with, the height, weight, speed compared to Stranad, but Stranad is out there getting it done in the third phase that for your 4th linebacker spot. That's the decision. I mean, it's really, if you're the 4th linebacker, it's going to come to probably down to the 3rd phase.
Yeah. And Sean Payton talked about this earlier of that. Are they going to keep 3 quarterbacks? That's a roster spot right there. Mm-hmm. Are they willing to chance it that Russell Wilson can stay healthy? I couldn't really tell which way he was leaning on that, because there is that 3rd quarterback exception that you can get an extra player on your active roster and still have that 3rd player or that 3rd quarterback be able to come in, even if he's not one of the 46 picked. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so there's some numbers games right there. I would love to see him keep 5 if they're all healthy going into the season, because I do like Jonas Griffith, and I think he could actually become another special teams guy as well. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what he was brought in for at first.
Originally.
Athletic guy that could maybe become a starter, but we at least can depend on him for special teams to be a good player. And then, like I said, Stranad, he's actually proved it on the field, so you don't really want to get rid of that. Broncos have shown a huge emphasis towards special teams this offseason, other than kicker. I think they're saying McManus did not do good enough last year
for the price
to have the spot, especially at his salary. Mm-hmm. But obviously now you're kind of in that purgatory of looking through every kicker that's been cut by some other team.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to actually get better at that spot, but otherwise, I mean, they've really worked to find guys that, through the draft, through the off season, that can really help on that special teams area.
Yeah, it will be fascinating to follow and see what that looks like for this team and how that roster battle plays out. I mean, training camp, preseason, those are when it's, I think, really fun to kind of get to those some of those deep guys on the roster. Harold Jean comes in saying Brandon Johnson will turn out to be nothing again. Yeah, he didn't have much. He got injured last season, like right before the season started, right? And then they brought him back. So we'll see that 5th, 6th wide receiver spot between, Kendall Hinton, Brendan Johnson, and Jalen Virgil will be interesting. Probably, again, if you're that far down the depth chart, probably comes down to special teams, but will be interesting. I mean, Marquez Callaway, also another guy out there. So some depth. Pretty fun to talk about those back-end position battles with some of those guys. Will be a lot of fun to follow. Facebook user, Howdy Men, Go Broncos. Thanks for all you guys do. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. I don't know about good work, but we're definitely keeping up the work. Appreciate it up. And talking about work being done, let me see. Do you see that on there? Maybe if I can make this full screen for you guys. There we go. So we had today's topic of the show was Good Morning Football recently put the AFC teams in tiers, and they did the 4 different tiers here. Tier 1 being the big dogs, essentially Super Bowl favorites / real contenders. They had hovering, which is that next tier team that, if they made the playoffs and got hot, it wouldn't be shocking. They had a tier 3 of to be determined. And they had a tier 4, which was the worst of the worst, saying shock the world. So a little bit more of a nicer PC way to say it, shock the world rather than, dead in the water or something like that. So Broncos were the last team in the AFC that they ranked in. Carl, I got to ask, I tossed this out there. Did you watch it yet?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay, because I was going to quiz you on where you'd think some of these are. So let's just go through it first before we play it for the Broncos. The Kansas City Chiefs, we don't have to waste too much time on this. They are not only the big dog in the AFC, but they're probably the big dog in the NFL, without a doubt. Everybody's chasing them right now. It's frustrating, as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are there, it's probably going to continue to be the case. Broncos haven't beat them since week 2, 2015. Chiefs are the big dogs. Yeah, it's rough. And David saying, bro, how are the Broncos even relevant? Well, decades and decades of being a very good team with a very passionate fan base, and not too far removed from a Super Bowl champion also. So relevant. But what do you think about the Chiefs being a big dog? Do you even have anything to add? I mean, it's pretty self-evident.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to put them in any other tier, you just can't do it. Team that's won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years, been right there in the AFC Championship game each of those years. One of the top coaches, top quarterback, maybe best tight end in football, decent defense. It stinks that they can lose a guy like Tyreek Hill and still be just as good, if not better. That just proves again that they have such a great structure, especially around Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of like Peyton Manning when he was with the Colts and even with the Broncos. Like, it didn't matter who else you put around them. They're going to be successful just because you got that guy.
Yeah, very frustrating. They're the big dogs. I'm curious to see what life for the Chiefs looks like after Andy Reid retires. That's probably the biggest thing that'll happen. I mean, Travis Kelce is also approaching the area where he should fall off. I mean, things happen. Tight ends can play for a while. So his game has never really been, explosive athleticism. So he probably will hang around and be solid still for a bit, unfortunately. But they're big dogs, without a doubt. The Chargers, Good Morning Football placed the Chargers in hovering tier 2. I think that's exactly right. Obviously, Justin Herbert. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan, unfortunately, but he still has to prove it that he can get it done in the big moments consistently. And team just seems pretty top heavy. I don't really trust the depth. And I mean, we were a lot of conversation of Brandon Staley being fired, so I can't put them in the big dogs right now. They got to prove that they can get it done. So they're tier 2 hovering. That's where Good Morning Football has them. I got no disagreement with that.
I'm with you there. Again, they might have the worst coach in the AFC West. That might be the one thing that's actually holding them back.
Josh McDaniels, though.
I know, but still, Brandon Staley with having, I would say, a top 7 quarterback, having great wide receivers, offensive line has been pretty well retooled, some decent players on defense, and still struggling to even get into the playoffs most years. And I just look at that and I say there's been a lot of times where I've seen them lose games because of coaching decisions.
Yeah.
So I just look at that and I'm not saying Josh McDaniels would be doing better with them. Okay, I guess I'd put Staley at number 3, but I think there's really a huge drop-off between Andy Reid, Sean Payton, then way down here is the next 2 guys.
Yeah. Yeah, the Brandon Staley is a tier 3 to be determined still for me, but the team itself, tier 2 hovering. Next, they went on to the Raiders, and they got Leonard Fournette here on the far right of the screen, and he had the Raiders. He wanted to put them more in the to be determined, but everybody else overruled him and said, nope, this is a shock the world team. Raiders are dreadful. They got a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Just questions surrounding Josh McDaniels and the rest of the team. Copy, cut, paste of whatever was going on in Denver, the Jay Cutler stuff going on in Las Vegas right now. That's a team that, I mean, the defense is pretty trash outside of Max Crosby. Offensive line is still a pretty big question mark. So shock the world for the Raiders. They are probably one of the worst 3 teams in the AFC West in my book, and that's where Good Morning Football has them as well.
When they're having conversations about having Tom Brady come out of retirement to save the team, that's not a good place to be.
No.
Jimmy G, they don't even know if he's going to be ready for week 1. And for an injury-prone quarterback to already have questions of can he play, that's not good. And they don't have a whole lot behind him to come in as a quarterback. They have some great players. I mean, some really top-tier players with Devontae Adams. Like you said, Max Crosby is another one. Josh Jacobs, one of the top 5 running backs in football right now. And so they have some really, really good players, but then the rest of the roster is just so bottom tier. And like I said, Josh McDaniels, I always kind of wonder, like, if he went to the Chiefs right now, would he destroy the Chiefs? I mean, Patrick Mahomes would be traded in like 2 weeks, but But still, like, I just wonder if he had that kind of roster, what would he do as a coach? And I'm guessing it would still be a really bad situation where they would implode pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't think he handles personalities very well. So probably would be bad. And I don't think Mahomes would be out. I think Josh McDaniels would be out with such a guy as established as that. We got Jasmine coming in saying, hey, guys. Hey to you, Jasmine. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you. And Zach with the comment that I just hope the Raiders are not bad enough to draft one of the top 2 quarterbacks next year. Yeah, that would be very unfortunate. It sounds like there was some interest for them. Didn't they try to? There's a lot of confirmed rumors that they tried to trade up to number 1 as well. So Raiders are definitely and that was after bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo, I believe. So definitely a team that is in the quarterback market. So it'll be interesting to follow this offseason. We got our next offseason. We got Rudy coming in saying, yo, back-to-back yos coming in from Rudy there. Appreciate you, Rudy. And now we got the Broncos coming here. And let's listen to what Good Morning Football has to say about ranking the Broncos here. Either tier 1, big dogs, tier 2, hovering, tier 3, to be determined, or tier 4, shock the world.
Tricky one. Let's wrap up the AFC West with these guys.
I love to start with them.
Okay. Big dogs is out. Hovering is out.
Hovering is out.
We arrive at the same thing with the Raiders, to be determined or shock the world. Lenny's already asking for it over at Shock the World. It was a terrible season last year, but there's been so much change.
You can't put those guys down there and not put the Broncos with them.
Yes, they can. They got Sean Payton now.
What do you think?
I'm waiting to see what he's going with.
I'm going to Shock the World.
Got to.
I'm going to Shock the World. Everybody agrees. Lenny with a strong opinion over there. Before I handed it, he was reaching for it.
Come on.
All right, guys, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the AFC West. We got one here.
So, yeah, it's Kyle Brandt, actually, the guy who a lot of people think is a big-time Broncos hater there. I guess he still does end up going with the Broncos being in the shock the world category, but he kind of was leaning to be determined. But Leonard Fournette and another one of his hosts was pushing him more to the shock the world category. But I disagree. And I'll give you the floor here, but they have the Broncos ranked as the worst tiered, one of the worst tiers of the AFC teams.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Broncos have not been good for a long time. They've had, I think, one of the bottom 5 records over the last 5 years when you're combined for the last 5 years. Yeah. But obviously got the Sean Payton factor. I mean, I think what they do, they ranked the coaches not too long ago on one of the main football pages. And I think he came in like 4th or 5th. And when you've got that in place, we've talked about it before. What do you have to have a successful organization? Great ownership, which Broncos have shown they have an ownership that's not afraid to spend. Doesn't mean it's going to be great, but they're at least willing to put out the money. You got to have a great coach. Broncos check on that part. Quarterback. Like if you have those 3 pieces, you're going to have a pretty successful team almost every single year. And Russell Wilson, this is where the whole picture really begins to take form. Is he what he was last year? Like, is he on the really downhill part of his career? Or is he what he was the 5 years before that? And I can't say either way right now. I do think the coaching staff last year did a horrible job. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I said last week, I've only heard one player from the Broncos or ex-player from last year that was at least with the team talk highly of him. Everybody else has pretty much been like, yeah, it was kind of a madhouse. And like the media that were there on a daily basis were like, yeah, this was bad. Like we've never seen a more unprofessional setup than what there was last year for the Broncos. And so I do think that played into Russell Wilson having some failure. I don't think he'll be what he was 5 years ago, where he was easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. But I also see a quarterback that, I mean, we've seen pictures of him. We've seen interviews with him, lost a lot of weight. So I think they pretty much told him, hey, you're going to be that quarterback that runs around a little bit like you were before. We need you to lose some weight. We need you to not be this bulky, I don't know what you want to call it, turtle sitting back there. Just we saw he was getting chased down by 300-pound defensive linemen. That shouldn't be happening for a guy his size. And so I do think he'll have a nice resurgence, maybe get there to the like 27 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Those are pretty good numbers. I mean, if he could do that, I would be very, very happy. And I think if he can do that, the team wins and makes it to the playoffs.
That would be good. And we got a lot of comments in here. Broncos will shock the NFL world and make the playoffs, have a chip on their shoulder. Yeah, hopefully they're good next year. We have a question coming in from Phil saying, David also saying the Broncos will shock the world just like the Nuggets did. We were making the playoffs this year. Sean Payton is a game changer. Absolutely, he is. Phil McLaughlin saying, is Josh Jacobs a possibility? He signed with the Raiders. He has not signed his franchise tag yet. I know that Saquon Barkley has not either. So we'll keep following that. Is he a possibility? I mean, I don't know exactly how it works at this point. Could he still be traded, or would they rescind it and he becomes a free agent?
So you would sign and trade.
It would be a sign and trade.
Yeah.
Okay. So probably not happening with the Broncos. If he hit free agency, then for sure things could happen. But I don't think the Raiders are going to be trading, especially Josh McDaniels, are going to be trading anybody to the Broncos, especially after, I guess there was a little bit of a contentiousness with Jarrett Stidham, right? And the Raiders wanted him back, and he chose the Broncos. So probably some hurt feelings there with the coaching and front office as well for the Broncos and the Raiders.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'm with you there. You don't see especially star players traded within the division very often. Can you think of a time?
TJ Hawkinson went from the Vikings to the Lions to the Vikings. He's not a star, but he's a Hawkinson.
Okay.
I can't think of many.
He's a star in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't think of many trades where that's happened.
So yeah, it would be to somebody else. And I can't see really the Broncos wanting to spend that big. I mean, if you're going to spend big at running back, instead of trading for one, why don't you just go sign Dalvin Cook?
Yeah.
I think you're not going to get quite the production, because I think Josh Jacobs is a better overall running back at this point, and younger, obviously. So you got a few more years of good play in him.
Healthy.
But still, you've got Javonte Williams, who you're hoping can really come back and be a good player for you. You got P. Ryan as your number 2. He's a very solid number 2. So there's still a couple other running backs on the list. I could see a few other positions the Broncos are willing to trade for or willing to pay big for still to bring to this roster. I think they're going to hit more of the more premier positions compared to running back.
Yeah, it'll be, if he's available next year, maybe we can have a conversation that would change things. But right now, in the immediacy, I just can't see it. But crazy things happen. Talk about crazy things. World First coming in here saying, told y'all the Illuminati what football team is owned by the former Secretary of State and the entire Walmart family. Well, if the Illuminati can open Russell Wilson's third eye so he can make better reads over the middle of the field, then I'm okay with it. But appreciate the comment coming in here. Appreciate the super coming in. Also, Jasmine $9.99 saying Russ has been great for 9 years and was bad for only 1 year in a new system. Why do we keep hanging this over his head? Is it his age? It's his age. It's how quickly he fell off. And also, unfortunately, I don't think it's only 1 year. There were special signs before this as well that it was starting to go now. A lot of people are like, oh, he had his thumb injured, but he wasn't even playing that well before that thumb injury last year in Seattle. And also, I mean, we've talked about it on here as well, where the NFL game has gone over the last 3 years, specifically defenses, really hurt what Russell Wilson does well. So the type of spacing that you used to have vertically, where Russell Wilson was a layup or 3-point shooter kind of guy, right? He was not really working the intermediate or the middle of the field. Well, now teams are playing much more canopy, umbrella coverage on the back end, not letting things go over the top. And if you are totally focusing on taking away the deep stuff, Russell Wilson doesn't have many other clubs in his bag from an explosive perspective. I mean, he hasn't been very good with yak guys. It's mostly been vertical kind of stuff. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things there, but hopefully he can be better this season overall with Sean Payton, hopefully maximizing what he does best.
Yeah, he's always been this quarterback that, like you said, he needs a certain defensive scheme to be successful, like to go against at least. And with Seattle, one of the great things they had since he's been there is a great running game. And he's always had a coach that's been focused on having the running game be the focus. So teams really want to crowd the box. And I think a lot of teams started getting to the point where they're like, okay, we'll give up the run. We're just not going to let Russell Wilson beat us over the top with big plays. And so they'd allow them to kind of dink and dunk with the run game down the field. And eventually you're going to stop it. And, it's the same thing that Seattle kind of did to the Broncos in the Super Bowl. I hate to talk about that game, but they kind of dared the Broncos to run in that game. Mm-hmm. They said, we're just not going to let Peyton Manning beat us. We're going to cover all this area out here. middle of the field right here for the run game. Boom, you could run up the middle if you want. And Broncos just didn't do it. Part of that was the coaching, that they didn't call the plays. But it's hard when you've got one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time that's coming off of one of the greatest seasons of all time. Like, you want to use that player. Chiefs ran into this with Patrick Mahomes as well against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Like, he was injured, both of your tackles are out, and the Bucks pretty much said, we're going to stop the pass. We're going to dare you to run. And so for the Broncos, they've got to force teams to really respect this run game. Now, they did a great job of rebuilding this offensive line to be able to say, yes, we're going to be a power running team. We're going to move people down the field. Obviously, you got P. Ryan, who's a very power running back, Javonte Williams, guys that can run downhill, and they're going to try to force teams to go to a cover one coverage that really then you can use the play action to feature Russell Wilson. But you've got to force teams to actually believe you're going to do it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was a big emphasis for the team this season. Heavier personnel to dictate more cover one and cover three from opposing defenses, hopefully more base packages, but even if not base, heavy nickel, and then forcing teams into cover one or cover three. And that's when you can hit them over the top of some of those vertical shots. It's freaking hard to do it against cover four and cover six. They're giving you the middle field. They're giving you the intermediate stuff, but Russ has struggled with that. So going to be interesting to follow. Also, I think the lack of, because of how much of his game has been predicated on the home run ball, he has in his career, especially in Seattle, utilized his legs to keep the offense on target or on rhythm, right? Pick up a first. Oh, the big play's not there. Okay, I'm going to escape, use my athleticism, pick up a first down. Didn't see that talk that much last season. He just did not have the same separation abilities. So it'll be interesting. Again, fascinating team to follow this season. Maybe the Broncos are in the category that Good Morning Football put them in as the shock the world, but fascinating team without a doubt. One of the more interesting teams to follow this year. 69 Skater Mike Wild Rift coming in saying, been listening to the pod for a year on Spotify. Now my first comment on the YouTube page. Well, thanks so much, 69 Skater Mike. It says, Buck you too, 69. We appreciate you coming in and saying hello. Hope you're doing well, and I hope you're doing pretty darn good. Tim Durr coming in saying Stefon Diggs rumors are laughable. Yeah, not sure what's going on there, but he's a pretty darn good receiver. So it'll be fun to see what happens with him. And Carl, as we start to wrap on up the show here before getting on out, personally, I think you'll probably agree with me on this. I don't have the Broncos in the shock the world one. I'm in the, the to be determined or interesting team. Just there's so many factors, and they didn't even get into it, and we've talked about it on here before, but the injury luck the Broncos had last season and the one-score game luck that they had last season. Let's say everything else is the same, even the same coaching staff, most of the same players, that kind of thing. I think the Broncos probably win 2.5 more games if you just have normalized luck in the injury department and the one-score game department. And that puts them at 7 wins? That's not great by any means, but considering nothing, we should see better than that with Sean Payton here and the emphasis they made in free agency. So I don't think people are putting enough credence in the volatility that is the injury luck and the one-score games that, again, should normalize this season and hopefully put the Broncos somewhere closer to the middle of the bell curve.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Anytime you add a coach that's a top 5 coach in football, you can't say that they're going to shock the world, in my opinion, because those guys are culture changers. Andy Reid going to the Chiefs, that changed their entire culture. Now, they didn't win a Super Bowl. Do what?
They sucked before that. That was a team that was picking number 1 a few years before that. They were terrible.
Yeah. I was at the Broncos Chiefs game with Todd Haley, where he got into Josh McDaniels' face and was like pointing at him and just like, because he ran up the score. Mm-hmm. And there was some thoughts that Josh McDaniels had gotten some plays in advance or something like that. Because obviously he was videotaping practices when we saw that overseas with the 49ers. But even beyond that, that was the Chiefs before Andy Reid got there. And all of a sudden he made them playoff contenders even before Patrick Mahomes. He took Alex Smith and took him from first round bust to pretty decent quarterback, top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. And then obviously now taking Patrick Mahomes and taking him to the top of quarterback tiers. But yeah, again, you get a coach in there that can really change everything. Bill Belichick's another one. Changed everything for the Patriots. I'm trying to think of which other. Tomlin. I mean, he took over a great Steelers team,
Hmm.
but he's kept them relevant through everything that they've gone through. You know, Big Ben with his injuries there later on in his career, they were still making the playoffs. They're still having winning records, even with that. I'm trying to think who else I'd put up there. Anybody else you'd stick?
In the top coaching, I mean, Sean McVay came to the Rams and they immediately were damn good. It's granted it's his first head coaching gig, but that doesn't make him not a damn good coach. So that's another one that stands out to me
Pete
as
Carroll?
well. Yeah, definitely a culture changer. So, I mean, yeah, those coaches really matter. And it should be a huge difference for the Broncos this year, just getting the little things right. Gary Palmer making sure to get the little things right as we close on out here, saying, I came in late, guys, so I'll watch it later. Well, you know what? Come in late, come in early, $9.99, we'll take it. Thank you so much, Gary. We really appreciate that. Hope you're doing well. And a comment here, I saw this one. I wanted to get into it. Tony Warren, looking at the positive side, and I like that, says, look how well Russ played the last 2 games. He played better in the last 2 games, without a doubt. I did go to check out his advanced stats over the last 2 games, and out of quarterbacks that with at least 20 snaps over the last 2 games, he came in as the 17th quarterback out of about 40. So, you know, right around league average, and was about the same with EPA per play. So he played league average. Now, granted, 2-game sample size, not condemning him for it and not, you know, getting over the top about it either. So something to watch, but definitely looked a little bit better out there. And Isaiah Stacks coming in and saying Kyle Shanahan as well. I thought about Kyle Shanahan, the fact that he hasn't won the big game yet. I didn't list him, but he's definitely another one that deserves the shout out.
And his teams have been so up and down. You know, it's either that they're a top tier team or they are like picking top 5.
His quarterback injury luck has been.
Well, yeah, that
insane.
too.
Yeah. So remember Nick Mullins? God, I'm so glad we don't have people calling to sign him anymore. Yeah, no, will be interesting to follow. But we also got Dylan Von Ark saying, love the stash, Nick. Stash is around for a short time, but a good time until Natalie gets back from her trip in Italy, but she'll be back soon. So, Carl, we're at 47 minutes now. Any final thoughts before we wrap on it up and take it on home?
Yeah, I just, like I said, I'm with you there. I think they really are in that to be determined category. Yeah. They've changed the 3 biggest components that I get talked about: ownership, coach, quarterback, in the last couple years. So all those guys are getting used to each other. They're all figuring out how to make this work. And I think if they can get all on the same page, this thing could become really successful really quickly. Yeah. I mean, Sean Payton did it with the Saints. They went from the Aints to the Saints very quickly once he got into the building. They were wearing brown paper bags. At least us Bronco fans have never had to do that. I'm sure there were a couple times when the play clock was going down and the fans are having to count it out loud for Hackett to get the play in and get it off on time. There's probably some times we were thinking about wearing those brown paper bags. But he's one of those coaches that can turn things around quickly because he has a system in place that does well to maximize a quarterback, to maximize the playmakers around him. And, I'm excited to see how big of a bump this gives Russell Wilson compared to last season. I really do think that it's going to be a pretty decent sized one, just because Hackett, he was just way over his head. There's so many things that you're just sitting there going, what in the world? Like, how do you go from having one of the most successful offenses with the Packers, and then you come here and you can't even get a play call in?
He wasn't the dude, obviously. So it will be interesting to follow. God, there was one point that you made that I wanted to touch on. Maybe it'll come back to me. Jasmine coming in saying, oh, did I click that? Did you click that? There we go.
I did, yeah.
Okay. Jasmine coming in saying, do you guys think Sean Payton's scheme will play into Russ's strengths? Sean Payton, much like what we saw just over the last 2 seasons with Andy Reid, has reinvented himself based on what's available in league trends right now. So whatever Sean Payton's scheme is, I do believe he will put Russ in the best position to succeed, but he is going to put a lot on Russ's plate as well, from option routes to pre-snap reads, that things that were struggles last season. And guess what? If Russ struggles with what Sean Payton is asking of him, Russ isn't going to be here for too long. So will be interesting to follow that. But I do think that he will put Russell Wilson in position to succeed. Anything beyond that will depend on Russ himself and the player talent around him.
Yeah. We've seen that he's been willing to switch up his scheme depending on who his quarterback is. Obviously, he had Drew Brees for a long, long time, which makes life pretty easy. but he also set up a system great to work with him. Jameis Winston, when he had his few starts with him back there in, was it 2021?
Mm-hmm.
He was looking pretty darn good as a quarterback.
Yep.
And you saw a real change in the offense. It wasn't any more of these quick timing, short routes. He all of a sudden started going more to the intermediate and deep routes with Jameis Winston. And it just shows, okay, I see that this guy, this is what he wants to do. This is where he feels most comfortable. And I think you're going to see Sean Payton willing to do a lot of the same with Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Will be interesting. And I thought of what I was going to say. Another coach that has been a program builder that's done pretty darn well, John Harbaugh. Another one that's probably worth a shout out as well. So, all right, guys. Well, that's going to have to do it for us today. We appreciate everybody coming in. Hopefully everybody had a great Tuesday. If you have any other questions for us, hit Carl and I up on Twitter. We are on Twitter a good bit. So myself specifically. So if you have anything on here that we did not get to, seriously, DM us, hit us up on Twitter. We will answer that to the best of our ability. Make sure you're following Carl on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH. And I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at BTB_pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says underneath, please subscribe to the channel over on YouTube, like this show, like this episode, and share the channel on your social media platforms. We really would appreciate that. Hope you guys are doing well. And we got Isaiah Stacks coming in saying, who do you credit for the Bengals? I credit a young nucleus coming together at the exact right time with the most important position as well. I do think that their coach, LaFleur, does deserve who's their coach? God, his name's escaping me right now. I want to say Callahan, but I think it's their offensive coordinator. We should know their coach, but I think it's really a lot of a good young core coming together at the exact right time. Zach Taylor, that's correct.
Yeah.
Coming together at the right time. I mean, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, Joe Burrow, and defense that has stayed relatively healthy as well, which you cannot overlook. So that's, I think, probably comes mostly down to the quarterback, but also just, hitting a lot of picks in a row in a short time that can really, build a core and propel a team.
Yeah. Like I said, Joe Burrow, anytime you can get a top 5 quarterback on your roster, that is bigger than the coach, bigger than the ownership, in my opinion. It's kind of, like I said, Peyton Manning. He's always the cream of the crop for me. I always say he's still the best quarterback that's ever played, more so than Tom Brady even. It didn't matter who his coach was. He was going to take the team to the playoffs. He was worth 10 wins just by himself, easily. And Joe Burrow, he's one of those guys that fits into that category. There's about 2 or 3 quarterbacks that you could argue fall within that category. Obviously Patrick Mahomes. I would say Joe Burrow's right there. I'm not sure about Josh Allen. I go back and forth on him because he's kind of up and down with his game. He has his times where he can cost the team, I would say. And so I'm not sure. Jalen Hurts obviously had a great season last year, but I need to see more consistency of him doing it year in, year out.
Mm-hmm.
And he was surrounded by an incredible team around him. Can he do it when he doesn't have that much talent?
Who knows? Will be interesting to follow. But Isaiah, thanks for you got the last second in there. Did want to shout out the Bengals as well. They're a pretty darn good team. And guys, that's gonna have to do it for Carl and I today. Make sure you guys continue to use kindness and compassion. Carl, any final words?
No, just excited to get to obviously to training camp here in about a month. Should be kicking off, and hopefully you guys can get outside a little bit, get a little sun like I did. Maybe put on a little more sunscreen than I did. But get out there, get some hikes in, as Nick always likes to go out and do, and just enjoy the good old summertime. It's always great to get out there, get some vitamin D from the sun, get some time with family, get out there camping, all those kind of things. Always recommend getting out there into nature.
Getting outside, unplugging a little bit, but we're gonna have to unplug here. Appreciate everybody coming in. Have a great rest of your day. Go Broncos.